Oh, there we go. Yes, men's Division 4 is underway, and we'll cover off starting angles after this division. That looks like a pretty bright start, actually, from Wolfson M2 gaining a little bit on Green Templeton. So, and Green Templeton taking a very interesting middle of the river approach. Not sure what's going on there.
Yes, I mean, technically, uphill racing, the stream tends to follow the middle of the river. So the closer to the bank you are, the less resistance you have to your speed. But the closer to the bank you are, the more chance of hitting it.
Exactly, and there's definitely been a number of the crews over the years who have hit the bank spectacularly, including a few yesterday as well. Yes, and this morning.
Christchurch just gone through. And
that looked to be a bump there.
They've been hit already.
Yep, so that looks like... Yes, absolutely. St Anthony's have bumped Oriel 2, so that's the first bump in this division. Yep. I mean, Oriel did go down 2 yesterday, so there might be a bit of a slower crew.
Yes.
That looks like St Peter's have bumped out as well, so I think... Oh, wow. So I think St Peter's have bumped out on Wolfson 2. Wasn't expecting that, but interesting.
Wolfson were gaining on Templeton.
That sounds like it's a very rapid St Peter's crew then, and this is going to be an interesting 3-boat sandwich. So I think it's good that we stick on camera too. We can see these three crews at the head of the division, and then I think if we zoom out, we can see some of the crews approaching as they enter the very tricky manoeuvring line that is the Gut. And that looks to be Oriel, who are being chased down pretty hard by Keble College too.
Yes. And actually, it's interesting to see the shape of the Gut, because there's an awful lot of rudder work going into that bay. And some of the crews have managed to take the bay and then avoid being hit, but some of the crews have tried to take the bay and then they get their stern just tagged by the bows of the crew behind. They then get spun through 45 degrees and it's chaos. So the yellow boat is just rowing off.
And that's a crew who, so I think they've cleared out. I think they have. That was a very, very clumsy manoeuvre out. So I think that is crew 4, which is Christchurch, bumping out on Wolfson. And this is a really interesting head of the division. I wouldn't expect it. I also just detected at the bottom of that division, I didn't see Teddy Hall 2, I saw Keble 2 and then the distinctive navy and white blazer St Hilda's below that. So I think Teddy Hall 2 bumped out on Keble 2. So we're already at 1, 2, 3, 4 bumps this division. Green Templeton will be fighting for their life here.
And they have no gaining on them now. Wolfson
a little bit. But to be fair, they're keeping it about a length and a half, but Wolfson have a way out of this race, and that's to bump. Green Templeton have no option but to row the full length of the course, and every bump that happens to them counts and they can do nothing about it. And Wolfson come with the additional stigma that they've been bumped twice themselves. So if Green Templeton get bumped by Wolfson, that ends up meaning that St Peter's and Christchurch both go up 2 positions, Wolfson go down 1, and Green Templeton go down a really, really terrifying 3 positions. And that's just how Torpids work. So Green Templeton are going to be desperately avoiding getting bumped by Wolfson.
Yes, it's very vindictive. It's almost like croquet. The more gentlemanly the sport, the more vindictive it is.
I'm very happy. This is my old St Cat's M2 crew, and that's St Cat's who have bumped St Hilda's. So St Cat's retain their position back in men's Division 4.
They've come back up into Division 4 because they went down yesterday, didn't they?
They did indeed. Now that's St Hilda's with a very interesting what we call middle of the river approach, which spoiler alert isn't the fastest way to go up this course, but there we go. People like to experiment up the green banks, and St Hilda's and St Cat's actually boat from boathouses next door to each other, so there's always a bit of a friendly rivalry between Cat's, Hilda's, Green Templeton, Mansfield and Hertford, who all boat from the Longbridges Boathouse, which is where camera 3 is positioned. I think we're cutting now.
That's at the camera 4 at New College Boathouse, and that's Green Templeton holding off Wolfson.
That looks to be maybe about 2 lengths. Yeah, I think it got a little bit close maybe off the start. They kind of narrowed it down to about a length, but actually Green Templeton has showed their endurance, their stamina, and they are walking away from Wolfson now, opening that gap up all the way up to 2 lengths of clear water.
And I'd say they're going to row over there. They're going to carry that, aren't they?
I mean, anything can happen because this is bumps, but that's probably the likely scenario. I'll very quickly run through what I think has happened so far. So St Peter's bumped out on Wolfson 2 and Christchurch bumped out on Wolfson 2. So the next crew racing, I think, will be Oriel 2. Anthony's bumped out on Oriel, so they're not a racing crew anymore. So I think let's stick with camera 4 because these are the last crews racing. I think you see Oriel, I think you see Oriel in the yellow boat there. I can't quite see from the blades because it is a little bit grainy.
Oh no, they've got white tips. got white tips.
Yeah, Christchurch bumped out on Wolfson quite early on, so I think it's going to be Oriel. Oriel have gone down one so far today by being bumped by St Anthony's. They will have Keble somewhere behind them, and then behind Keble will be St Hilda's, and then that will be the last racing crew in this division. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bumps so far in this division. Men's Division 4 is notorious over the years for being one messy spaghetti pile of a division. Thankfully, with only 10 boats, it's a bit less confusing, but
and up at the front, that looks very close.
It does. I mean, it's always shortening. Yeah, it's always very hard to detect over a camera, but it did. I don't know if they crossed the finish line there, but that could be interesting. So we'll have to see what happens there. I mean, these last 3 crews in the division here, they've all actually got quite close to each other. They've made up a fair bit of ground. So I think Men's Division 4 is going to be full of bumps on Thursday and Friday. This is going to be a lot of chopping and changing. And with a lot of chopping and changing comes spoons, which is where you get bumped on every single day, but also the glory of blades, which is where you bump either every single day or on every opportunity. The rules are different by college, but we tend to call it you've bumped every single day of the week.
Yes. So there you're just looking at St Hilda's bringing up the rear, following on behind Keble, and ahead of them is
Oriel.
Yep.
And actually, if you look where Oriel stopped rowing and they wound down, that's where the finish line was. I think if we saw anything between Wolfson and Green Templeton, it was actually further upstream of that. So I think Green Templeton wound down because they'd reached the end of their race. Wolfson did as well, and they just happened to get quite close to each other after the race had happened. So my money's on no bump there between Wolfson 2 and Green Templeton, meaning that I think Green Templeton will row over as the sandwich boat in Men's Division 3.
That's good. And then there's the safety launch that comes up to sweep up after the last racing crew. And any crews following up, therefore, are just coming home for tea.